Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, and Brock Purdy will all see a massive rise in their dynasty value over the next 12 months. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. On today's show, we're taking a look at three quarterbacks who are set to see a massive increase in their dynasty value over the next 12 months. And let's start with Caleb Williams, Kate, who I couldn't be more in on right now. You and I were talking before the show. I just traded up to draft Caleb Williams at 101 in a dynasty league that I'm currently drafting in. Why do we expect his dynasty value to go up significantly from QB7 right now?
Here's the thing. So at USC coming out, we knew that he had been tabbed with the generational name, which again, probably thrown around a little bit too much. But when you look at Caleb Williams, you see clear arm talent. I think you see a just innate football player. You see this innate quarterback who just has this feel for how to play the position, a feel for the pocket that feels so far beyond his years. Now he's stepping into what I think is probably the best situation we've ever seen for a quarterback drafted with the first overall pick in my memory. Can you think of a better situation? So I want to just take a look at this depth chart, Marcus. You've got Caleb Williams, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet's coming off a career year. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Keenan Allen all had PFF receiving grades over 87 last year, all ranked ridiculously high in that metric. Yards per route run, all were at either 2.2 yards per route run or above, which is excellent. He is walking into the best situation that you could possibly envision for a quarterback. He's got the mobility. There's nothing that Caleb Williams doesn't have right now.
I agree with you. I can't remember a situation where a quarterback is coming into a team that was already, I mean, they didn't make the playoffs, but they were on the verge of making the playoffs. The only one that I think is somewhat similar, and again, this isn't even that close, was when Andrew Luck joined the Colts in 2012. Now, they had the number one pick, but it was really because Peyton Manning just didn't play at all that season. So you had like Reggie Wayne at the end of his career, but still a really good Reggie Wayne. You had a good defense with Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney, but that doesn't compare to this. Like I've never seen a quarterback walk into a team that has this many weapons, right? And
the offensive line is good too. Like it's not like they loaded up on weapons, but he might be taking, 40, 50, 60 sacks. Like, no, this is a really good offensive line to pair with really good weapons. Like the offense is just
it's set. Now I have some more questions on the offensive line than I do at the skill positions, but you're talking about DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and then Keenan Allen as your wide receiver 3. And oh, by the way, they have actually depth in like Tyler Scott, who's somebody they drafted in the 4th round a year ago. They've got Cole Kmet, they've got Gerald Everett. Like they have, not only do they have top end talent, Kate, but they also have the depth in case injuries happen. Like behind DeAndre Swift is Roschon Johnson, who you and I liked quite a bit, and Khalil Herbert, who was a really good running back, a year ago. So everything is set up here for Caleb to be good. Now, here's why I think the ADP is going to go up. If he has a average year, but you see flashes, there's just no way the ADP is going down, right? I think he's going to start surpassing quarterbacks like Like even Lamar Jackson, right? And if he has a really good year like CJ Stroud, you're going to see him get boosted up inside the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks. And that's where I think he's ultimately going to be at this time next year. I think you have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, 1 and 2. We can debate on who should be 1, who should be 2. And then I think the conversation is going to be CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams. Now, Stroud also has a bunch of playmakers around him. And he plays in a dome, so that gives him a little bit more of an edge. But I think that is going to be where we end up next year is, would you rather have CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams going forward? So I think he's a screaming buy at QB7 right now.
Here's the thing. I actually think that regardless, like if Caleb Williams has an average season with flashes, I could still picture him overtaking CJ Stroud in consensus dynasty rankings just for the fact that he is a better prospect overall coming out. Obviously, like CJ Stroud, kind of a mixed bag in terms of his evaluation. The S2 scoring, that whole debacle, I don't know how much that had an effect on him.
Notice we didn't hear anything about the S2 this year.
Yeah, no, not a peep about the S2. But I mean, overall, I don't think there's anybody that would argue that Caleb Williams is not a better prospect than CJ Stroud coming out of college.
And that doesn't mean he's going to be better, but I think I would agree.
But I think
Caleb
that
Williams,
bias in and of itself, that matters. And that does factor into your overall evaluations of these players, especially this early in their careers.
I don't think Caleb Williams needs to have a CJ Stroud rookie season to see his dynasty value go way up. I mean, we talked about this on Friday's show, right? Anthony Richardson got hurt in 2 of the 4 games that he started and still saw his dynasty value go up, right? So obviously I think Caleb's going to need to do a little bit more than that. But even if it's only average and then we see some bright spots, I just don't see how his dynasty value goes down. And it wouldn't shock me if, let's say it is one of those seasons where it's 27 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. You're going to see people starting to talk themselves into, well, Josh Allen's getting older. Patrick Mahomes is getting older. How much longer is Lamar Jackson going to be able to keep up this level of play? It's coming. I'm just telling you, it's absolutely coming.
For sure.
All right. He's not the only rookie quarterback, though, Kate, that is going to see a big increase in their dynasty value and their ADP average draft position. We will get to Washington's franchise quarterback next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. We're getting really close to the NBA Finals. Right now, the Dallas Mavericks are plus 200 to be the NBA champions. That seems pretty low considering Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are just making every single shot at the end of the game. So go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and check out all of the great odds for the NBA Finals and the NHL Finals and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, let's talk about Jayden Daniels, who is currently being drafted as QB 11. Why do you expect his value to go way up after his rookie season?
I gotta admit, so we just talked about Caleb Williams in the last segment, and obviously the personnel that Jayden Daniels will be working with in year one kind of pales in comparison to the ridiculous set of skill position players the Bears put in place for Williams. I do think Daniels, though, is stepping into a situation where, I mean, you could do a lot worse than Terry McLaurin. I still think there's some potential there for Jahan Dotson. Love Ben Sinnott. We've talked a lot about him and his potential contributions as this uber athletic, high upside, receiving type tight end. You have Austin Eckler as a safety valve. We'll see how much he gets utilized given Jayden Daniels' potential as a runner. But that's all as a passer, right? I want to focus on his edge in terms of rushing upside, because that is, I think, what's going to give him a massive edge, and what I think could make him take over a guy like Anthony Richardson in the ranks, who's being drafted right around like QB8 in Dynasty. I think Jayden Daniels could easily overtake him, because here's the thing. In addition to his absolutely fantastic rushing ability, I think he's a better passer than Anthony Richardson. Doesn't necessarily have the arm strength, but I think has a little bit more accuracy that's going to lend itself to consistency. You have Jayden Daniels that came out of LSU. He posted a 92.4 PFF rushing grade in 2023 that led all quarterbacks in the NCAA at 1,300 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns, averaging 10.4 yards per carry, a 41% missed forced tackle rate on those runs. And then there's the proficiency as a passer, which almost feels secondary. 93.4 clean pocket grade, 95.2 grade on throws at or beyond the sticks, 91.4 no play action grade, which play action can mask a lot of inadequacies at the quarterback position. And guess what? That wasn't an issue for Jayden Daniels. I just think the balance of upside as a passer paired with his upside as a runner is going to have people head over heels for Jayden Daniels here in 2024.
I also think there's one team in the NFL this year that could have like a Houston Texans type of rise. It probably is the Washington Commanders, right? Like they got a new head coach in Dan Quinn, who I've got mixed feelings about Dan Quinn as the head coach, but for the most part, he's actually been a fairly good head coach. He got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. They were multiple playoff games. I think he's going to prove to be an upgrade over Ron Rivera, who they had last year. Cliff Kingsbury, we'll see how he is as an offensive coordinator, but there's just been a big influx of talent on this roster, not only with Jayden Daniels, but they drafted Ben Sinnott. I think they did some good work on the offensive line as well. Obviously, the defense still has a ways to go, but that's Dan Quinn's specialty. If the Commanders go from a team that was drafting at number 2 overall last year to 9 wins, I think people are going to be really excited about the trajectory of this team, much like they were with the Texans last year. Could we see Jayden Daniels start to rise up the rankings and leapfrog players like Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow? Absolutely. We know how dynamic he is with his legs. If he can continue to be as prolific as a passer as we saw in college, maybe he really will be the next Lamar Jackson. And maybe this will be the perfect setup for him with all the weapons they have and the pace that Dan Quinn wants to play at. And this is the last thing, Kate, before I stop rambling here. We've talked about this offseason, how generally defensive-minded coaches like to be conservative on offense and let their defense do the heavy lifting. Like, look no further than your Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like, if you ask Mike Tomlin, like, what his ideal game is, it's like 17-14, right? That's not Dan
that
Quinn.
seems like
that's even high.
Like, score.
Like he wants the 14-13 type of game, right? Dan Quinn's not that way. He is a different style of defensive coach. He wants to get turnovers. He wants to play fast on offense. He wants to turn games into a shootout, because then he can use his pass rush and his defense that's very aggressive to create takeaways, to get sacks, all that kind of stuff. So I think the Commanders are going to play really fast this year. I think they're going to have a ton of snaps on offense, and that's all going to lead to Jayden Daniels hopefully putting up some video game-like numbers.
Video game-like numbers feels like the exact appropriate kind of description here. And you know what? Just to speak to how much I love these guys and how much I expect them to make an impact in year one that is going to have an astronomical effect on their dynasty value. Actually, I'm just dropping an article today on PFF that highlights one of my bold predictions of the year being that we're going to see not one, but 2 rookie quarterbacks finish in the top 12, and that's being conservative. Top 12. I think top 10, top 8 is within the realm of possibility for these two in year one. And those two quarterbacks are Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels. I absolutely love these two. And Marcus, I think these rookies kind of have it in the bag, barring injury.
That was going to be my next point. On a game by game basis, who do you expect to score more fantasy points per game as a rookie, Caleb Williams or Jayden Daniels?
Jayden Daniels. But that is with the caveat that we know rushing, upside is a cheat code. I think Caleb Williams is overall the better quarterback prospect. And I have many fewer health concerns. Like Jayden Daniels has been, mostly healthy, but with his frame and the way that he takes hits, that scares me for his long-term prospects. So that's why 10 times out of 10, I'm giving Caleb Williams the edge, even if I think, maybe there's some higher upside for fantasy on a week-to-week basis. I still think the floor is going to be much safer with Caleb Williams, with also a very high ceiling, just not maybe quite as high of that as Jayden Daniels.
I agree. And that's the difference here, right? I agree with you. I think points per game, Jayden Daniels would be higher, but I don't think Caleb Williams needs to, as a rookie, average more to be the better dynasty asset. I just think his body and his style of play is going to be more conducive to playing longer in the NFL or being able to hold up more over the course of a season than what Jayden Daniels will. I still like both quarterbacks. I expect both quarterbacks to see a big uptick in value, but I still greatly prefer Caleb Williams to Jayden Daniels right now. Maybe things will change as we get into the season, but that's how I feel right now. Okay, let's talk about a veteran who could see their dynasty value rise, because so far we've only talked about rookies. Which veteran will see a massive increase in their dynasty value? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to tip off. And with killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets. I absolutely love Gametime. It's what I use to buy all of my tickets, and you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, for concerts, for comedy events, for theater events near you, and save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And you can save even more when you let Gametime choose your seats and you choose the section. They'll choose the seats for you. It makes it so easy. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA final tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, on tomorrow's show, we're going to do this exact same show, but for running backs. Which 3 running backs are going to see their ADPs rise over the next 12 months? It doesn't happen very often. Quarterbacks, you do see them typically go up the more they play. Not the case for running backs. So this is going to be a little bit more challenging. So be sure to tune in for that show. But let's talk about Brock Purdy, who, listen, I've got my thoughts about Brock Purdy, the actual player. But the dynasty asset, I don't understand his value right now. I think it's only going to go up.
Yeah, let's talk about Brock Purdy's value. Everybody's familiar with the story. Mr. Irrelevant came to, stardom in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Nobody expected that, right? And I think, and I've actually been one of these people. If you guys have been, listening for a while, and you remember back in Super Bowl week, we talked about Brock Purdy as one of the assets that is the most the most to lose or gain in the Super Bowl. But I don't know, as the offseason goes on, I feel like more and more that we're kind of sleeping on Brock Purdy. Looking at his current value on Dynasty League football, in startup drafts, being drafted on average as the quarterback 15. Now, he's actually seen a loss in value since the offseason. I think maybe that's just due to this influx of rookies coming into the mix. But can we just shout out like the absolute bonkers season he had in 2023? Because over 4,200 passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He ranked as the QB 8 with 18.5 fantasy points per game. And that's despite the fact that he only had 144 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He truly was one of the most prolific passers in the game in 2023. He's got a loaded arsenal of weapons. He's got the best play caller in the league. So like, I don't know. I'm hating on myself here as well because I've been too low on Brock Purdy, I think. So yeah, if he has one more good season, Marcus, he is going to explode because it's going to be time to get that contract. And I think the contract is going to be that last bit that people need in order to buy into his long-term value here in the NFL.
I still think there's this perception that what he did last year was a fluke. And there was a small sample size in 2022 when he started the final 5 games of the year. But I think once he does it again, and he certainly will, because this Kyle Shanahan offense is QB proof. Any quarterback can look competent in this offense. Yes, I said that, 49er fans. Once he has another season like he did last year, it's going to be like, okay, he's done this for 2.5 years. It's probably not a fluke anymore. And you mentioned the weapons around him. Like, yes, Christian McCaffrey is getting older. Yes, Brandon Ayuk is in a contract year. Yes, Deebo Samuel is getting older. George Kittle is getting older. But what did they do this year? They drafted Ricky Pearsall. They drafted some running backs, Isaac Guerrero, to give them more speed in the backfield. Like, I have no doubt that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are going to continue to load up on playmakers around Brock Purdy so he doesn't have to feel like he needs to do it all. I think they'll eventually get a deal done with Ayuk. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade Deebo Samuel after this year. And it's Pearsall and Ayuk who are the number 1 and number 2 receivers. It's going to be fine. I don't understand the decrease in value outside of, hey, there was a couple good rookie quarterbacks, including Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams. And that's the only reason why his dynasty value went low. But if you're getting him right now at QB 15 prices, I think that's incredible because I think he's going to be a top 12, maybe top 10 dynasty quarterback after this season.
Yeah. And I mean, like you really can't find many stats that are going to have you out on Brock Purdy. Averaged almost 270 passing yards per game, 9.6 yards per pass attempt, 7% passing touchdown rate, which again, like you saw the small sample size in 2022 and you're like, there's no way. There's no way he's going to continue to put up that kind of production as a passer, especially in the touchdown realm. Well, he did it. He continued to show out 113 passer rating. And again, from a fantasy perspective, you look at, what he's accomplished. He had 4 finishes as a top 5 quarterback last year. He was a QB1 in 10 of 16 games played. You have a pretty safe floor. And I think for a guy who's like, primarily a passer, I think we saw a little bit more dynamicism to his running game in 2023, but like, that's not going to be something that you can count on any given week is that type of upside. Like for a guy whose fantasy production is primarily based on his proficiency as a passer, like you've got to love that safety and that upside as well.
I think his current dynasty price, which is again QB 15, is like baking in the idea that there's going to be a regression to the mean in terms of his efficiency, which could happen, by the way. Like it's probably unlikely that he's going to get more efficient, but if it's the same, I think you're going to see a massive rise in his dynasty value. You're going to see him go up from QB 15 to QB 12. And if there's a 5% chance that he's better because this will be his 3rd full year in the offense and he just gets to be more comfortable. And a lot of times we see these QBs break out in year 3, or not break out, but start to have like their best statistical season in year 3. Now we're having a totally different conversation about Brock Purdy. Like, can you imagine Kate, if there's a year where you're looking at his numbers from last year, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, what if he throws for 4,800 yards and it's 38 touchdowns and it's 6 interceptions and it's 350 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns? Again, I'm not saying how that's going to happen or how likely that is to happen, but there is a world where Brock Purdy gets better in Kyle Shanahan's offense. And I think that's being severely underrated right now.
Yeah, they made some, investment in the offensive line. You add Ricky Pearsall, who, I don't think either of us were particularly high on him from a fantasy perspective, but a good route runner that's going to add an extra element of athleticism to this offense. Again, you add speed in the backfield. There are a lot of things that I think the 49ers have done to ensure that Brock Purdy will continue to be set up for success.
Yes.
Regardless of, the long-term outcomes, I think we could all agree that the prospect of, both Debo and Ayuk being in this offense long-term feels like it's not going to happen. But I just think there's not a ton of risk here baked into his current ADP at QB 15.
100% agree. 100% agree. So go buy Brock Purdy now before his value goes to the moon. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, every dayers on tomorrow's show, looking at 3 running backs who are going to see a big increase in their average draft position over the next 12 months. So tune in for that. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.